Hello, I'm John Bachman.
And I'm Miranda Kahn. It's June 1st. Coming up today on Newsmax Now, it's been 12 hours since parts of the Patriot Act expired, thanks in part to another Rand Paul talkathon. Are we more vulnerable, or is America just a little more free today? And how long will all of this last? Full coverage just ahead right here on Newsmax TV and Newsmax.com throughout the day.
And is Congress a small business? Coming up, one of the most underreported scandals about Obamacare. See how both parties are trying to act like mom and pop shops so they can get a pass from the ballooning costs of the Affordable Care Act.
And then there were two more. Well, at least one more for now, probably two more by the end of the day. But are Martin O'Malley and Lindsey Graham coming into the race with just far too much baggage? That's ahead later today during our Newsmax Now roundtable. And welcome to Newsmax Now. A bid today, a couple of new entries into the presidential race. Are you getting excited? Lindsey Graham making it official this morning, and Martin O'Malley over the weekend doing the same on the Democratic side of the race. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. A
lot more to talk about there. Also, a couple notable Supreme Court rulings coming down this morning. A ruling in favor of the man who posted those threats on Facebook. Also, a ruling about a woman in favor of her who sued clothing store Abercrombie & Fitch for discriminating against her. That woman is a Muslim and she wanted to wear a hijab to work. SCOTUS says Abercrombie is liable for discrimination in this case. We'll have more on all this coming up a little bit later. But first, we have to talk about the Patriot Act. This hour on Capitol Hill, the Senate is getting back to work after allowing the bulk collection of phone data, part of the Patriot Act, to expire last night. The bulk of the fighting was within the Republican Party. Senator Rand Paul on one side, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and just about everybody else on the other side.
Are we going to so blithely give up our freedom? Are we going to so blithely go along and just say, take it? Well, I'm not going to take it anymore.
We shouldn't be disarming unilaterally as our enemies grow more sophisticated and aggressive.
But in the end, that's basically what happened at midnight. The NSA's bulk collection of phone data had to be shut down. The Senate is now expected to move this week to vote on the USA Freedom Act, which is an acronym. We'll talk about that coming up. It replaces the bulk collection system with a new system of searching records that are held by your phone company.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham says he wants to become president to take on the enemies that are trying to kill Americans.
Not just penalize them or criticize them or contain them, but defeat them.
And there you heard Senator Graham channeling Ronald Reagan's peace through strength concept during his rally today. If the Iowa caucuses were held today, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker might be a runaway winner. A new Des Moines Register poll shows him with a 7-point lead over the rest of the pack. 2/3 of Republicans who say they're likely to attend the caucuses favor Walker. Dr. Ben Carson gets 10%, but also leads all candidates among women who plan, again, to attend the caucuses.
Well, former Vice President Dick Cheney could play a major role in the GOP presidential race. The Wall Street Journal says Cheney and his daughter Liz are set to release a book this fall outlining how they believe the U.S. should be acting on the world stage. Cheney also has been advising some White House hopefuls, and 2 of his top foreign policy aides are already working with former Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
On the other side of the race, Democrats are on the hunt for money. The New York Times says they need a Democratic answer to GOP donors like the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson. Part of the problem, the paper says Clinton reportedly isn't meeting with any potential mega donors.
The Justice Department is now funding a study into far-right groups on social media. The Washington Free Beacon now says the Justice Department's National Institute of Justice is spending nearly $600,000 on this study, according to the grant. Posts from all over the internet from far-right and Islamic extremist movements will be analyzed to find hidden networks.
10 people are hurt after a crane drops a load in Midtown Manhattan. The crane was hauling a shipping container seized machine to the top of a 30-story building yesterday when it suddenly cut loose.
Seemed like this piece of equipment tumbled out into the street, and like was stated earlier, we have right now we have 10 injuries, all minor, so we're very lucky.
Yeah, they are. An AC unit took out pieces of the Madison Avenue building as it bounced down the side. Take a look at all that damage. Investigators are looking for the cause of this incident.
More fallout for former House Speaker Dennis Hastert. His alma mater has now stripped his name from a center on economics and public policy. Wheaton College made the move in the wake of the scandal swirling around Hastert. He's now facing federal charges, accused of lying to the FBI and covering money transfers, or covering them up, rather. Several reports, I should say Hastert agreed to pay millions to hush allegations of sexual abuse while he was a teacher and a wrestling coach.
5 members of the Taliban traded for Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl are having their travel bans extended. Bergdahl was released last year in exchange for 5 detainees at Guantanamo Bay. All 5 were sent to Qatar. They were there to be monitored and banned from travel. Those bans were due to expire today, but are being kept in place. At least one of the 5 men has allegedly had contact with militants in the past year.
And as the bombardment of Yemen continues, there are now worries about Americans being held hostage. Saudi airstrikes have hit a weapons depot in a mountain overlooking the capital of Sana'a. And the State Department now says at least 4 Americans are being held hostage in Yemen by the Shia rebels. The Washington Post says it believes all 4 are being held in a prison near the capital. There you go, just another example of why foreign policy, national security playing such an important role in the already happening presidential election for 2016. And speaking of that, a lot of the would-be or soon-to-be candidates out there blasting Rand Paul. He certainly put his neck out there on this Patriot Act deal. Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, blasting Rand Paul last week. He followed up yesterday on This Week on ABC about the Kentucky senator. Here's what Jindal had to say.
I don't think he will be our party's nominee. I wasn't surprised to hear a presidential candidate want to continue the failed foreign policies of President Obama. I was just surprised it was a Republican. Listen to what he said. He said that ISIS exists because of foreign policy hawks in the Republican Party. George, that's nonsense. That is reckless. That is almost bizarre rhetoric coming from somebody who's auditioning to be commander-in-chief.
But the constructive criticism of Paul's weekend did not stop there.
No, it certainly did not. Fox analyst Britt Hume also talked about Rand Paul's stance on the Patriot Act, and Paul blaming, as you just heard, some of the members of the GOP for ISIS. Take a listen.
He seems confused about which party he's running in. These stances, either on surveillance or on who's responsible for ISIS, are not going to sit well with, the majority of the Republican electorate. It's just not going to happen.
Hume went on to say that there actually are some people in the GOP who share Paul's paranoid view on things. Certainly not a compliment for Paul, or is it? Because, if there are people there that kind of find themselves independent or lean more libertarian, that might actually make them go out and vote for him, that he doesn't, take a side just to be popular within his own party.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Mike Warren from the National Review about this a little bit later. The Weekly Standard, I should say. We saw those poll numbers also, Rand Paul in 3rd place in that new Des Moines Registered poll. I want to see what happens to those poll numbers now after this weekend. It's one thing to have a potential rival in the race like Bobby Jindal criticizing Rand Paul. When you see Britt Hume doing it on Fox News, Britt Hume's an analyst, a person a lot of people in Washington respect for his experience analyzing this type of stuff, calling Rand Paul paranoid. Whether it was a slip of the tongue or that verbiage was intended to be used in that way, paranoid is no way you want to describe a presidential candidate, or no way if you're running for president that you want to be described.
Yeah, I think there are 2 ways of looking at it. Like I said, it's one way for him to separate himself from the rest of the pack and get attention and get into the face of others, people who are maybe undecided, independent voters, more libertarians, but it can also be very dangerous to alienate yourself from members of the GOP when that is the ticket that you're running on.
Right. Maybe marginalized, but time will tell. Of course, we'll talk about this much more throughout the day. And also want to remind everybody, this USA Freedom Act you're going to hear more about, an acronym. It stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Fulfilling Rights in Ending Eavesdropping, Dragnet Collection, and Online Monitoring Act. I don't know exactly what's in it, but how can you be against that?
Yeah, that's very long.
All right, before we go, we want to also talk about Bob Schiefert, the longtime CBS News Face the Nation host. He said goodbye this weekend. Let's take a listen to his final send-off.
Maybe it's because I just love the news, but at the time I thought every job I ever had was the best job in the world. Going behind police lines, talking to cops and soldiers, and then senators, and even presidents. I tried to remember that the news is not about the newscaster, it's about the people who make it and those who are affected by it. I'll be honest, I'm going to miss being in the middle of things, but the one thing I will never forget is the trust you placed in me.
A lot of great stories about Bob Schieffer out there. He will be missed, but also another reminder that the landscape of Washington media is changing in a big way.
He'll be deeply missed. I miss those old school journalists, right?
Yep. All right, we got much more to come here on Newsmax Now. Stick around.